Good news, project truck is here. Bad news is it's green and red and also black and grey. Just need to give it a quick hose down, so at least it's only, you know, 3 colours. Much more better, or less bad. I'm still getting quite wet though. Also, most of the red is coming off. The moss is stronger than the paint. Well, that's the complete body restoration taken care of. I mean, it's like brand new. Don't even think you need to paint. Yeah. Well, today's job is to return this to the factory finish. Nope. Just going to sand the crap out of it. I could be a while. What is this, 40 grit? Oh. Need to go to a 1 grit. Here we are for the next step. You can see the truck behind. I'll move the hood over there because I don't want to spray the door of the garage black. Everything's covered in this strange pink dust. I can't remember where that's come from. Anyway, this is paint. I'm just going to dust this on because the wind is picking up, it's getting cold, and this stuff runs really badly. What type of paint, I hear you ask? It's black acid etch primer. So it's going to eat its way into the surface and hopefully give us a finish we can work with, identify where the dents are, and because it's a matte black finish like the rest of the truck, you can circle it with chalk and work and see where the filler and high points and dents and rust. I've got the driveway a little bit over there, but hey, zebra stripes, that's good. Well, that's the grille painted. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like on the truck. Not perfect, but hey, it was free, and a can of paint was only a £5. It'll do. Well, hello. and welcome to Project Big Block. I've called it Project Big Block because this is a 7.4 litre or 454 cubic inches Chevrolet Big Block engine. Yes! So Project Big Block is a project about a big block. It's going in the Chevy truck behind me. Now there'll be a lot of tearing apart of that, but we're going to start by tearing apart this. This is the exciting bit, but don't get too excited. I've had a peep. She's only a 2-bolt main. That's fine. That's going to limit us to around 700 horsepower. Can't go much further than that in the truck anyway because of reasons. So this, oh, I can't wait, is Project Big Block. Maybe you should take it off here. Oh, by the way, it's still on the crane because I don't trust these bolts and they stick out too far, so I can't turn it round. But hey, you didn't need to see any of that, okay? Our little secret. Don't tell the wife. Just noticed my camera lens is a little steamed up from the viewfinder here. Well, that's your problem. I'm going to crack on anyway. Need to get these lifters out. Oh goodness. Need to. I'll go for that one. Get these lifters out. Now we can start to see what condition the engine's in. Yep. A little bit of wear on there. Quite a lot of rust. What that means, it's been sitting for a long time, but it didn't do much before that. So I'm going to continue to try and... Oh, here comes the postman. Yeah! Hi, Bob.
Having fun?
Yeah. Always. Thank you very much.
Fun pulling it apart.
It's putting it back together I'm not good at. As we see, we have the engine inverted. It's not built like a Deutz or Daimler or whichever one it was that was upside down during the war. Anyway, it's supposed to be the right way up, and this isn't it. Just pulling out bolts left, right and centre and looking at the chaos. We've got some mayonnaise in here. We'll thin this down with some milk later and reuse that. Get a nice flavour, I suspect. Hey, oh, look at that oil pump. Seized solid. Absolutely disgusting. It's a good job there's a new one in a box over there. Get out of here. Okay, this is the next part. As you can see, I've started disassemblificating the main bearing caps. Just give them a little tickle like this and it will destroy any future attempt to reassemble. If you see on there, casting number, GM, a little arrow pointing forwards. We have a look at the shell, often confused with the bearing. This is a shell made of white metal. This is the most scored out of all of them that's come out so far. Slight score in there, but if I can't catch my fingernail in it, it's okay. The bearing's good. The actual bearing face is good. That'll go with a polish. Okay. Wow. I've already cleaned this one up a bit, and you can see there's some slight scoring, but nothing I can catch my fingernail in. So we're going to go ahead and reuse that. No, we're not. It's already been stamped number 8, so we'll go ahead and throw that in the recycling where we can't find it later. Just carefully tease this down, and then it just slides out easily like that. Oh, the shell's fallen off somewhere. We'll get the shell suit later, but it's a yellower from that handle. You didn't see me do that, by the way. There's a correct way and I avoid it wherever possible. Wrist pin, okay. There's no piston slop in there. Oil rings actually free. Both piston rings are free. Believe it or not, that will live to die another day. Number 8 is okay. Now friends, we've removed all the main bearing caps and the shells were worn, I think is the word for it. There's one laying on the ground. Actually that's a rod bearing shell. And they were equally worn. Couple of scratches. They've obviously gotten nice and warm, but the crank will go again with a polish. There's a few little marks on it, but you know, a polish would be fine. What I'm doing here is using the correct method to remove the harmonic balancer because I've broken my puller. Well, that's the excuse I'm using. There we go. Magical hand appearing from my left. Well, he's always right to you. Is Gareth.
Hi.
You're always heavy-handed with these things, throwing them about, aren't you? You never see me doing anything other than caress.
Can I bang that back that way so you can reuse it?
Yeah, that's a good idea. In hindsight, no. We're going to need a new timing chain cover now, because what's happened here is there's an interference fit. I've interfered with it and it doesn't fit. Right, after wrestling the harmonic balancer off, I'll try saying that sentence again. Right, after wrestling with the harmonic balancer, managed to get that off, release the timing chain cover, which may need to be replaced, and I can now get on the end of the timing chain. By removing the timing chain and putting the gear back on the camshaft, I can now get hold of the camshaft. But in order for you to see that, let's at least get this crank out at last! Here cometh El Crankos. Holy Jesus Christ! Oh, there's no swearing on my YouTube channel. Until now. Well, I need a breather for a minute. Let's have a look at these, the top half of these shells. Basically, the bottom half of shells is what takes the friction and the wear, you know, because of gravity and stuff. So the top half, if they're worn, you know the engine's buggered. And you know what? They're actually not. Must be a screwdriver or something around here. Where's my bent screwdriver? My favourite bent screwdriver. Believe me, this is so I can screw round corners. Excellent thing. There. So we've got some end play on here, because we're almost down to the can't even think copper. That's the word. I'm tired. Leave me alone. And the white metal in there is still okay. So we've got end play. We might need thrust bearing and other things. But it's just, I'll pick these out with my fingers, teeth, ears. I'll pick them out with something is what I'll do. Yes, that's the correct tool for this. Equally, my hands are too dirty for that, but yeah, you get the point. It's garbage. Not going to reuse them anyway. Garbage. Garbage. And more garbo. Now, we've exposed the camshaft. And as I say, by putting the timing gear back on the camshaft, I'll be able to draw the camshaft out into the washing machine so that we can clean that up and reuse it. Now, probably best move the engine stand back so we don't put it in the washing machine. Otherwise, you know, the wife will be mad at me. Here we go. These are famously tricky to remove because they drop down in between the bearings as you withdraw them. It's actually worse trying to install them, as you put new bearings in there and then knock them out on the way through. Fortunately, with the crank out of the way, you can just stick your fingers in there. And you still have to fight with the bearings. There's the next set of bearings. And also people get hung up on this little pin that sticks up here. This one's seized into place. But that engages on this lobe of the camshaft and operates the fuel pump. We don't need to worry about that because we've got an electric pump in the truck anyway. But it will get in the way of some of these bearings. One bump stick removal. Hey, do you know what? None of them are rounded, they've still got lobes on them. It's rusty, but it isn't worn out. So I'm going to file this carefully in the scrap pile. Get out of here. Hello, I have updates. After removal of my rubber I can find things underneath, things that I'm not happy about. Get at it. And there's the whole issue. We need to repair a bit of the cab floor. As much as I like air conditioning, this vehicle wasn't originally supplied with ankle vents. Let's start peeling back the layers. Carpet's out of the way. Let's check out the floor. Oh, very holy. What are all these wires for? I mean, that's not connected to anything. Like that. I think what I'll do is just go ahead and put the carpet back over that, like it never happened. A hole here. I think that's part of the outer rocker repair panel. So it comes right up to there, and I'll get this as well. Oh, now let's look on the inside. Yep. That looks rusty too. Yep. More ankle vents than is required, to the tune of 1. This is supposed to be here. This is the forward cab mount. I mean, it looks crusty, but it's actually okay. But the repair panel comes up to this line up here anyway. Yeah, 2 ankle vents. I guess it's deliberate, you know, 1 for each ankle. It's going to need a full floor on that side, isn't it? Okay, I've given the floor a little tickle with my toothbrush, and the ankle vent actually extends all the way along the thigh. Not sure if you can see it. Somewhere over here there's a hole, and that's going to want new floor in that side. The other side actually cleaned up okay, believe it or not. I've got a few updates for you. I actually got the correct badge. Making some progress on the old truck. And I fitted a spoiler too. It's just a couple of tech screws holding it in place for now. It's not glued in. This needs to be blended in to the bodywork. That aeroplane, whatever, it's noisy. Needs to be blended into the body line a little better than that. But I quite like it. That got held up in customs for a whole month. But it's here now. It's on the truck. I think the last time we spoke, Dear Diary update, or whatever this is dealing with this ankle vent here and the thigh vent here. Well, some of you may or may not know, I have another truck, and I went ahead and cut the floor out of it. So I have that panel. I'll trim this up, I'll lay it in there, get things aligned, stick it in place. Yeah. Whoa. Today is all about bodybuilding, and this is just filler. In fact, the primer I used dries matte, specifically so you can go around with chalk, fill where the dents are, circle them, mix up some filler, probably going to use all of this, and then just sand most of it back. Seems wasteful, but then you're left with a straight body. Here's a little patch I was working on earlier. As you can see, there was a little dent in the wheel arch that I've now filled. I'm going to go at it with a 40 grit just to knock the top surface off, now that filler's dried, and get the initial shape. can already see a pattern emerging here too. So we've got this flat surface on the radius of the arch itself. High spot here, high spot here, low spot here where the paint hasn't been sanded away, and also places in the middle where the filler is. We need to add more filler. It's also becoming smooth here and here where we're at just the right height. The secondary radius here is a double curve. It's going to be more tricky. I'll just continue to add more filler, sand, more filler, and just keep feeling it until it feels about right. It's also useful to get some gloss paint on there so we can see the reflection where the dent is. Only the whole side of the truck to go. I'd like to show you how to repair a hole. Previous owner has put a hole there, I don't know why, but he has. Perhaps he wanted a light there. You take your favourite rock auto magnet, you stick the square body Chevy magnet on the inside, you stick fiberglass, oh, magnet down. And then we just let that dry. Hopefully we can peel the magnet back off the back, stick it back on the toolbox. This filler incidentally has got fiberglass in it, so it's really good for bridges and gaps. Well, that's that little corner taken care of. A little bit of fiberglass, there's a filler on top to make that good. The rock auto magnet is probably still on the inside, but hey, it's not a concern. What is a concern is this hole here. Now, originally there would have been a bumper that came out of here. I've decided not to do a bumper because I didn't have one. So I'm going to do a roll pan instead, which you can see popped up there. I've done a little bit of trimming on that so I can bend it a bit further. It wasn't quite the right shape for here. I'm going to stick that on there. I haven't got enough filler for the gap, so I'm going to use a roll pan instead. Get a screw to just tack it in for now. Could be a while. Why don't you go make yourself a cup of tea? There we go. A little bit of grinding back so no one sees how bad my weld is, but ultimately that's a full metal weld all the way around. The shape has been made. And here's the finished result. Welded, filled, a little bit of primer on there so it matches. There's still a little bit of dressing up to do. I'm happy with that. Well, you might have noticed that we have a boat anchor. Scrap iron? No. Cylinder head. This is part of the big block project. The big block itself, by the way, I dropped off at a machine shop this morning. Remember those bores were pitted and scored and rusty and they weren't nice. Well, I took it down to a guy who looked exactly like Brian May. And he said, "I'm not Brian May. My name's Paul." So I said, "Okay, Paul, do you think you could take a look at this block and tell me what you think?" He said, "It needs to be overboard. You can't get away with a hone. You can't hone something plus 30 over." Well, he's right. So we'll go for boring it over. I looked at plus 30 pistons, reasonable prices, plus 40 pistons, reasonable prices. Plus 40 would guarantee getting past those pit marks. So I did the right thing and ordered plus 60 pistons because they were cheaper. Dropped those off to him with the block this morning and he should be playing around with that. I've also given him the crank to give that a little polish up and we'll go from there. Meanwhile, today I'm going to be rebuilding this cylinder head. So let me run you down. No. Let me give you a rundown, that sounds better, of why I'm rebuilding the cylinder head. I mean, just look at it. It's horrible. I've taken a couple of valves out already, as you can see. They're pretty rusty. And I could probably clean a lot of this up. But it's just not nice, and there's that little ridge in there. This is actually still slightly oily, believe it or not. So the stem valve guide is probably okay, but we're going to be looking at those too. So inlet and exhaust valves there. I do actually happen to have a replacement set of drumsticks. These are not drumsticks. These are inlet and exhaust valves, standard size, brand new. The reason this one's a different colour is because it's made of a slightly different material, which I can't remember the name of, begins with an S. Anyway, it's to take the heat of the exhaust. And the originals were done in the same sort of way. We'll take those out. In the cam kit, we've got a new set of springs. These are not them, these are the old ones. They're disgusting, but they are double valve springs. We've got new keepers, collets and whatever you want to call them, and valve stem seals. We've got the lot to go in. But first, we need to get this blown apart, Napoleon blown apart, and give it a good clean. That might be a place to start, don't you think? Now I'll continue to tighten it down. Probably helps if I turn that the correct way. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Goodness. I make it look like it's difficult, don't I? It's really not. See that valve is spring is being compressed. That's giving us access to the collets. They'll drop out. There's one. Remember, I'm not quite in line with the valve at the bottom because of the way that the cylinder head fouls on here, so that's why I'm not quite in line here. It's okay on the exhaust valves, it's the inlets that don't quite line up. But this is a big block, so everything is just huge and in the way and heavy and filthy. There you go. Both of those keepers or collets have now been removed. We've got new ones of those, but we're not going to throw any of this away. We're going to save all this for reasons of posterity, or other reasons which I can't think of. I don't know why you'd want to save them, they're just garbage. I mean, everything that's come out so far has been garbage. Look at the sparkulators. Look, just trashed. Not many miles on them, just all the miles were under the sea. Loosen this off nice and slowly. If I just release this handle, that's going to go flying. There's a lot of tension on here. New valve springs, of course, going to have even more tension on them. Now we can release the handle. Pull off the spring. Stem seal. Still sealing pretty good, I can't get it off. There we go. It's just rubbery things and a springy thing. That's actually a rear spring for a Renault Clio, in case you wondered. Exactly the same part number. I mean, that's why. That's why we're doing this. Well, Happy New Year. It's 2024 and I've got the engine block back from the machine shop. We also have the cylinder heads and boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. Now my first job is to be putting this engine swinging from the crane onto the engine stand, but before I do that, this is my only opportunity to do this cam plug and these core plugs, or freeze plugs, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a little tickle and get this installed while I can. Well, the big block is back on the stand. You see why I had to do the cam plug first. That's tricky. I decided to do these core plugs afterwards because I can still get to them. Ah, it's like Christmas again. I'm seeing this with my eyes for the first time. Ah, this is going to be nice. So the guy at the machine shop had it for a little while over Christmas, you know, because of reasons. And he wrapped it up for me, put some machine oil in there to keep it nice and clean. Let me bring you in so you can see these bores. So much nicer. This is the one, if you remember, had that massive pit. Lovely machining. I mean, it's covered in oil and I think the camera's struggling to focus. Here's an update. I'm in the process of cleaning and painting the cylinder block and heads and, well, you know, the engine stuff. The problem is it's covered with a lot of machining oil, grease and debris. So I'm going over it with some Swaffiga, a little nail brush to get the grease out of it and contaminants. And I'm using nail varnish remover, acetone, gets through that. I'm also using some isopropyl alcohol because I don't have enough nail cleaner, believe it or not, and some white spirit. The intake manifold is just bolted on here so I can pick it up and move it around if I need to. The heads have just got a couple of bolts in for the same reason. I want to know where the gasket faces are, so I keep them nice and clean as I go through and paint them. The intake manifold was aluminum. As you can see, I'm painting that black too. And after all those chemic holes have been on the block, I need to get the chemicals off before I paint it. I also need to sweat the block, which means to get all of that grease out, dry it off, clean it up. So of course, that's an excuse to use the More Fire selector. By heating up the metal, what's happening is the porous textured surface is sweating all the grease and contaminants out, and then I'll go over it, clean it again, warm it up again, clean it some more, warm it up some more, until I'm satisfied the surface is dry and contaminant free.
Now get a little bit and then twist it.
That's it. A little bit on the end of the paintbrush. Twist it so it doesn't drip, and then gently rub it in. Make sure all that's rubbed in nicely. You're doing a really good job. Slave labour. Works for biscuits and chocolate. Don't you? Yeah? And action. So now we've got our shiny paint on there. The next stage of the process is to pop in the core plugs, or freeze plugs, or you know, other names. They use this socket. This is a 1 1/8. That's a 1 3/4, but you want it to be loose in there because otherwise when it goes in it closes up and pinches your socket, and then, well, that's how you lose sockets. There you go. Always make sure you do it on fresh paint, then you get some on your fingers. Perfect. Try and get it square in the hole, or round in the hole. You know what I mean. Right, that's those in. There are still 2 more core plugs to do on the back of the engine behind here. Now from experience, they're always the ones that go rotten first, and they're right inside the bell housing where you can't get to them. So I'm going to make sure they're done. Remind me in case I forget. Okay, good. Plug's done. Next. So I hear you're asking, how do you get that core plug in the back? Well, simple. We know that socket fits in there. Just put an extension on the socket and then it doesn't foul on the frame. Do you know, it's almost like I've done this before. Almost. Oh, putting up a little fight. But that's how you do it. Hello. There we go, that's the first bit cut out. Say hello, Lauren.
Hello.
There we go. What I've done is I've made this worse.
Yes, there's a big hole there.
I maybe spotted that.
Yep.
But that's that bit. Wow. That's some progress. Yes, these are the fuel lines. Yes, this is a wiring loom. No, I didn't disconnect it. I think that one's a brake line just there. So we want to keep well away from that. There we go. I'm going to carry on doing this. You go help yourself to a cup of tea and some sandwiches maybe. This bit round here is going to be tricky. I'm going to take my time cutting this out in little chunks. Get out of here. I don't know if you can tell, but it's designed to fit in here. But I need to trim things down. I'll trim this off up here. I've trimmed this side already. I only need to trim around here so that this shape matches that shape. Okay, I've cleaned up all the edges after cutting things out. So you might have spotted the weather has turned. I don't know what it is, but every time I come out here something happens. That's hail. Fortunately, it's going straight through and out the bottom. It's a hail vent. Hello. Today I'm doing things. I wanted to attack this welding on the floor, so I took the door off. And then I realised that I needed to fix the frame underneath before I fixed the floor. And I thought the best way to do that is probably take the whole thing to pieces. So you joined me halfway through the job of taking everything off. Getting kind of sketchy now, right? That's the other one off. I've got a lot of chassis work to do, so I guess click action. Here marks the start of the third segment of this video. Chassis repairs. We've talked about body repairs, we've talked about welding, we've talked about modifying. We even talked about Project Big Block, sat in the garage there waiting to go in. But we need to do something with this frame. Suspension, brakes, and rust. This may seem a little strange, but in order to lift the cab up, I jacked it up after taking the 4 cab bolts out and put it up on 4 axle stands. It's now stable, as long as I don't, poke it. But it's still not high enough for the chassis to roll out from underneath it. So what I've done is I've lowered the chassis, because I can't jack the body any higher. Taken the wheels off and put the frame on dollies so she can just roll around quite easily under there. When I've been working on these cars, we had snow when I was doing the Pontiac, we had hail when I was trying to do some of the floor in here, we've had some really bad weather. But today is absolutely glorious sunshine. It's really hot and an ideal day to lift the cab off there by hand. But hey, you know what? The cab is off. I can now brace the floor knowing it's level and weld this patch in. I can also clean up and repair this chassis. I've got new suspension components, new brake components, all to come. Don't worry, I'll fill you in. There's some repairs that have gone on in the past here I don't like the look of. I'm going to clean those up, see if I can do something better. There's bits of chassis missing. I have to go ahead and repair that. But there we are, all blown into pieces. The time has finally come, and this video is turning into something of an unboxing video, but greatness is about to happen. Oh la la! Actually, this has come about to cure a problem that I created deliberately. And what that is to say is I needed pistons with a wrist pin that had retainers so it didn't all fall to pieces on me. There's all the rings here supplied, but look at this. I'm waffling. You got to see the good stuff. The wife's paused the video while she's put some antifreeze into a glass, and this is a thing of greatness. 21cc dome, 4310 bore, big block forged piston. And fortunately, they sent 8 of them. Okay, just a closer look at the pistons here. I've opened all 8. Turns out they're the same. I've consumed most of this alcoholic coolant that the wife's provided for me. I'm getting a little woozy here. But I didn't show you these. Pistons come with brand new, obviously, wrist pins or gudgeon pins. And these are the spiral locks to hold them in place. Piston rings, top, second, third, and oil. And underneath the pistons, they've written on them the weights. This is 685 Kilos, grams, you choose. Stone, ounces, pounds. They're all pretty much the same. 686 again. Oh, I don't want to do that. These cup holders keep falling over. There's this rubbish everywhere. 686. They're matched really well. 686 again, or it could be 688. 685. 685 again. Try and keep those as a pair. 685. We'll keep those three as a pair. That's either 686 or 989. We'll keep that one as a pair by itself. More cocktails. Yeah. What's this? Don't know. Good enough. Time to stop dreaming. Put things away. Oh, sticker. It's literally the best bit. Wise Co. Yep, that's here. Oh, one for the wife as well. Here you go.
Thank you.
You can put that on the back of your car. Makes it adds 10 horsepower.
Does it?
Bump stick. So I've only greased up these first two journals, bearings. And we're going to go ahead and push this through. Now my guy who did the machining on the block for me put some new cam bearings in, and I stopped there, and he had this cam to make sure those new cam bearings were sized perfectly. Now, do you remember me saying I've got to do the cam first, because otherwise you can't access the cam with the crank in the way. So we've gone through two bearings now, and as you see, if I slip this through, we don't have any grease on here. So we're just going to reach in there and make sure that's fully greased up before the cam goes through to the next bearing. This stuff is super sticky. I'm going to just tease that in to the next one, like that. Coming out the other one. Now, we just repeat this process until all of these are seated nicely. So, comp cams. It says that this camshaft raises the rev up a little bit from standard. That's where it gets the extra horses from. Rev range is between 1500 and 6000 RPM, so it's a nice wide brand of drivability. Advertised intake duration is 270, advertised exhaust duration is 270, and it's a 110 degree lobe separation angle. Here we go. Stop talking, Dave. Let's get this in. This last bit's tricky. Got to be careful not to catch the lobes on the bearings as you go through. There we are, we're in line for the last one. Final push, plop. See, that should go in nice and easy like that. It is in. Just spread our hands around on these lobes. And that's the cam in. Next, other stuff. I need a cup of tea. This is a good cup of tea. What should we do next? Yeah, I thought so too. Here it is. Here's one I prepared earlier. Oh, this is possibly the heaviest part of this engine. apart from the block itself. Now, as you can see, this doesn't look all that fabulous. I took this to the same machine shop that bored the block for me, and he gave it a polish. It is in fact the original crank, and believe it or not, it's in good condition, so I'm going to go ahead and reuse it. So the 60 thou over bore and the original 4-inch stroke crank takes my cubes up to 467 from 454. So if you multiply 4-inch stroke, that's 2 inches off centre from the main to the big end, multiplied by 2 is a 4-inch stroke, and you take the bore, which is 4 1/4 inches plus 60 thou makes it 4.310, and you multiply that by 8, then you get your cubic displacement in inches, which is 467, which is 7.7 litres, in case you wondered what it would be. 7.7 litres. Anyway, let's plop this bad boy in here. This is super heavy, so I'm going to get my footing right first, and then lower her down gentle. Are we in? I don't think we are. We're fouling on something back here. There we go. That's in there. Make sure that rotates nice and freely and there's no debris in the way to ruin your brand new main bearing. There you go. The crank and the bump stick are both in. Now I've got to go and find the main bearing caps. I wonder what I did with them. Good news! I found the main bearing caps, and it's still got the old bearings in there. I can just tease that out. Where's my teasing tool? There it is. Ah. Here. There. You can see the original rear main bearing, and a few score marks on there. Oh, you can't see that. Let me hold it up and try that again. You see, yeah, here we are then. Rear main bearing, a few score marks on there, but ultimately it's not too bad. We're not going to use it again, we've got new ones. And 4.5 thrust, got some wear in them too. There's a few deep grooves in that one. My point here is, this is an original one, never been changed, and it's not in bad condition. But that goes in the scrap pile. I'm going to put some new ones in. 2-piece rear main seal. So called because it's in 2 pieces. There we go. Before we forget, a little bit of this assembly lube. There. Okay. Here we go again. Upgrading the original. It's noisy out there. Upgrading the original factory main bolts to ARP bolts, and they are bolts, not studs. Studs were more expensive. There's some instructions in here. I shall paraphrase. Tighten them up. Okay, that's good. Oh, a sticker. Nice. That's going straight on the toolbox. So here's the bolts. This is what you get in the kit. Not much, is it? There we are. They're all tweaked up. Or tweaked down. So this is the book that I'm working to. How to build a killer big block Chevy. And it says here, main bolt caps, 110 foot-pounds. Well, I'm using ARP, not the standard ones. And these particular ones are 6-siders, 9/16. We'll start by taking them down to 60 foot-pounds. As I said, it's not far off what that thing does anyway. Get my foot round the stand so I don't push this across the garage. There she clicks. There we go. Now we're going up to 100 foot-pounds. See? And it's the same again. We'll just check. Yeah, still spinning nicely. There we go. 9/16 ARP main bolts, done up to 110 foot-pounds as according to the book, with ARP fastener lubricant stuff in there. And I think that's going to call it for the day. Of course, one more little clean up. You need to be really, I mean, there's still stuff coming off of it. Really on top of keeping it clean. As much as I'm enjoying this, I don't want to have to do it again for a little while. Confession time. I know, you probably spotted it. I didn't put the washers in. Well, at least this machine isn't noisy. Yeah, it is. We see how far that lubricant anti-seize stuff has gone up the thread there. Good, isn't it? Shouldn't need to reapply. Bored yet? Thought so. Put a pin in it, it's done. That still rotates really nicely in there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. If only you thought to tell me there was washers. Goodness. Okay, next step. Let's go and poke it with a new timing set. Oh, instructions. We're not going to need those. Oh, cool sticker. We're going to need that. So, moving swiftly on. This here gear is on with the alignment for timing pointing straight up. The engine's upside down. I'm going to go ahead and pop this on. I'm going to get the gear so those align, and then pop the chain on. That's not quite a line, is it? So we need to pull it round one tooth. That's a bit better. They're in line now. So pop that on the camera. Ha! Down happened to be in the right place. That never happens. And pop this locking plate on there. There is a little hole for that dowel. In the comp cams kit came this timing set. This is a double roller. Just means twice as much chain as the original. Stamped clearly on it that this is the front, and stamped clearly on here is the fact that you can put this in 3 different ways round, whether you want advanced or retarded timing. Guess advanced is if you want to race, and retarded is if you don't. I'm retarded already, so we'll go ahead and put it in the neutral position, so it's pretty much where it would be stock from factory if they used this. Now I let this third one go in. Oh, I've not quite got it lined up. Okay, seamless transition. I've now gone and found my book. Hey, I was reading it last night, okay, and I skip over to page 131 and it gives me all the stock bolt torque settings, and I can see here that the cam sprocket bolts should be 20 foot-pounds of torque. There we go. There we go. That is better. Right, here we are. Cylinder head. Change of scenery today. What I'm going to be doing is fitting some brand new valves to this cylinder head and springs. But what we need to do, we need to invent a tool to get that to seat nicely in there. Exhaust and inlet. So first of all, you need your valve grinding tool and paste, coarse and fine. Then you need to get yourself a drill, wedge a 1/4 inch socket backwards in there, pull off one end of that and plop it on the end of there. That way it makes this a lot easier to grind in. See that? Need to put some paste on there, give it a grind, and there we go. They actually fit really nicely, but we're going to give that a clean up just as I suggested. Oh, the lid's run backwards. This is the coarse one. A little bit of that. On that edge. Here we go. is a tech tip for you. After grinding in those valve seats, as I showed you a minute ago, why not turn it up, fill it with water. This will tell you two things. It'll tell you if it leaks. I haven't got the springs on there, so it's still not leaking, which is great. It's a nice seal in there. The other thing is you can measure the amount of water that you've put in there. In this case, it's 125 cc's. Now I can work out the compression the engine's going to be, knowing the combustion chamber of the cylinder head is 125 cc's. I don't know if you remember, but I said there's a right way and a wrong way to do valve seat grinding in. Let me show you the other way, which isn't the right way, but it is easy. Get yourself a little drill, tighten it up on the top of the valve stem, pop the valve out, get your rubbing compound in there, just grease with sand in it if you remember, and just let me show you from another angle. Right, the next stage of the process, valve stem seal is in, and so is the shim that goes underneath it. So it's fitting the valve springs. This is a little fiddly because my tools don't really fit this. Something about a big block is that it's big, and most tools don't fit. So I'm struggling a little bit. Okay, we've only got one more valve spring to put on. You think I get it right by this point, but there's bound to be something where I'm wrong. You see how the springs are offset to each other, the valves are offset? This was known as the porcupine head. Just a nice little factoid for you. So here we go, this valve has been lapped in. Here's the spring, seating nicely, and here's the top. Keeper valve spring retainer. I'm sure there's a correct name for it. What do you call them? And you'll know when this has been tightened down enough because your hand will start to hurt. Yeah, we're getting there. I need tea. Here's the collets. I'll pop those in. 1, 2. Valve spring retainers, give it a little bit of a wiggle. That's in there quite nicely. I don't know if you can see that, but hey, that's your problem. I'm just going to go ahead and release the clamp from underneath, and it's in, just like that. Isn't that good? Getting away from cylinder heads for a moment, my bolt kit from ARP has arrived, and I've started to screw things on. Timing chain cover is now in place with the alignment marker thing. Harmonic balancer next. Let's see if we can do this one-handed. Probably not, because this is ridiculously heavy. There. Just need to put that in place. It's looking good. Well, there's a significant amount of work getting the chassis out, and as you can see, it's disgusting. Socks, the shop cat, is currently approaching, and not helpful. Thank you. Meow to you too. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and give this a tickle with a wire brush. As you can see, I've made a start, but I'm already finding holes in various places I'm going to have to weld and repair. This has got to be strong. Dead battery. Weird. Chassis is now the other way up, so this is the bottom. I can now get to radiator mounts, repair those. Maybe a little chassis repair here, and a little chassis repair here. This is where the roll bar bolts and this French lace could be better. This here is rust converter. Converts rust to a ready to paint surface. Get it in all the nooks and crannies. As you can see, I've been wire brushing, grinding this chassis down, splopping some of this on there, ready to paint. Anyway, there's some advanced rust here, so I'm going to use quite a lot of this. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, here's something a little different. Engine mounts. This chassis was originally from a V6, so the engine mounts were great big long brackets to mount the engine further back. To mount the engine mounts further back. The mounts themselves are the same. These are new clamshells with the old bolts. The reason I'm doing it now is because once you put the suspension in the way, these bolts are really hard to get at, and they're not captive. Anyway, I carry on tightening these bolts. Well, as you can see, the chassis has now been sanded and painted and rust treated and wax oiled. So the next stage is to cut out some of the more ugly parts and maybe put some prettier stuff in there. Let me bring you in, I'll show you what I mean. There's a little hole here. There's some. Oh, I'll weld that back in for a start. Yeah, so I'm going to cut that out. Same thing the other side. I've marked up a few little areas that I need to cut out and repair. Even these radiator core supports down here, they need to be done as well. I'm going to be lowering my standards. To do that, you have to flip the axle from under the spring on top of the rear spring, but then it fouls with the chassis, so you need a C-notch, so the axle tube still has room to go up and down with the suspension without fouling on the frame. You can't just cut a hole out without strengthening the frame first, so that's what I'm going to do with this C-notch kit. Well, let's put a stop to it. Scrap pile. C-notch complete. Obviously the frame's upside down, so the axle will go into that recess when the suspension goes up and down. The day has come, the walrus said, to talk of sealing wax and cabbages, and I don't know what the saying is, but the day has come. And here is the ringleader. Okay, enough of the poor jokes. What I'm saying is we have the new pistons and rods to go in this block. Do you remember me showing you about gapping rings? Well, okay, here's just a recap. We put the ring in, twizzle it round, come on now. Use another piston. This is one of those flat top pistons I couldn't, or recessed pistons I couldn't use, but it's good enough flat surface to push that ring down so that I can measure the gap in this ring. Now the gap needs to be 22 thou, and it's not, it's too tight. So we pull that one out, and I take this over to the bench, grind it down a bit, repeat the process over and over again until we've got all the rings sussed out before we put them on the pistons. Let me show you how that's done. I don't know if my hand's in the way. Can you see that? Let's grind the ring down a little bit. Then we go remeasure. Also, it's good practice after you've ground a little bit off the ring. Just tickle those edges with a little file. Can leave a sharp edge which can damage the piston or even the bore. And if they get stuck, it will break the ring too. So we'll just give that little tickle, tidy that up. Try it in here again. Tamp it down with piston you got laying around, as long as that edge is flat, pushing it in true, not square because it's round. Hey, we're getting close. We've got a gap now that we can measure. It was way too tight. It's about 15 thou. Now I need to take this out to 20 thou. Back on the grinder again and repeat. And there we go, 20 thou, 5 and 15. So this little chart here, others are available, basically says if I'm using this on the streep or the strap, then I've got to go 4500 thousandths over bore times stroke and whatever else the calculation is. Basically it works out, I'll show you my math. So my bore of 4.310 multiplied by 0.0045, which is what you need for that, ends up as 20 thou. It's actually 19 thou, but I didn't have a 19 feeler, so I went for a 20. Probably could have made it, but hey, rather go slightly too big than slightly too small. At the end of the day, I don't want stuff to get broken. The next ring, number 2, works out a similar way but slightly bigger gap, 22 thou. Okay, now we've got those rings sorted, we can get these delicious pistons installed, or at least offered up. I use this as number 1 because it's the first one I picked up. Just going to double check the bore, make sure that's lovely. A little bit of slop. That's kind of what the rings are for. Going to install, actually we're probably best install number 2 first, don't we? There's 10 and 2 on those. Turn it back this way, double check. Trust but verify. It's a job to get hold of them. 10 and 2, so 1 is 10, 2 is 2, turn it through 180 degrees, oil ring 10 and 2. That's all set up. Now the exciting bit of sticking a rod on it. Here's the rod. Just going to offer that up. The crank is in there, but the bearing material is not. This is slightly offset, as you can see, and the reason for that is because of things. The taper's this side, so it goes to the outside of the journal, as this side's flat, so it goes to the next rod. That can be confirmed by the taper on the crank itself. It's not a problem, it's just how it is. The piston has this dome on it, so it's important to get the orientation right into the cylinder head. This is supposed to be with the letters effectively upside down, like that. I was showing you around this way before, just offering it up. It should be round, you know, it doesn't matter. So that means this goes in this way. The OEM ones were press fit. These are not press fit, although this one's putting up a bit of a fight. Oh, there we go. I've put things down, so I need to confirm that we're around the right orientation. Yep. That goes through there, like that. These things fit together really nicely. Now this has got the spiral locks to go in the end. It's tricky to install, but the next stage is to put all this lot in there, I guess. That seems like a good idea. This here is Lucas assembly oil. It's kind of like a grease. Let me just smother that all over the place. You can assemble it with ordinary engine oil, of course, but I like to give this the best coating I can. See, I put it on the skirt as well. That goes through here, seats itself in there, piston seats itself nicely in there. Now we use this professional piston insertion tool. Other tools are available, but you know, this is specific to a big block, this one. It's a big block of wood. One almighty good tap, rather than tickling it, is the way forward. That piston's in. It is a good idea to do this. Oh, I'm going to spray some WD-40 in this one. Kind of give it a clean up after it's been knocked in, you know. It's a good idea to do this. Make sure it doesn't feel like it's binding up anywhere. It should give you some resistance, but not a lot. There. You can see how proud that is of the bore, the block, going into the recess of the cylinder head to increase compression by reducing the cylinder head combustion chamber size. perfect. Well, it's raining outside, so I'm working in here today. As you can see, the rear axle has been removed from the pick-em-up truck. I'm just in the process of pulling the diff out because one of the little I can just squeeze past, excuse me now, the locker on this one is broken up, so seeing as how it no longer has a locking differential, it's not really much use for doing burnouts. Just a one wheel peel. I believe this is a posi traction unit as well. Anyway, knock the centre pin out. That took some hammering. You usually just push them out with your finger, but this one took some hammering. Release the C-clip. Pull out the drive shaft, the axle shaft. The C-clip that locks it in place goes in this groove here. And this is a 30 pin spline that goes into the differential itself. On this end we have 5x5 wheel lug nut stud configuration. Body remove this backing plate. You can see wheel cylinder, and that's where the drum would be, and that's where the parking brake cable would go in. The reason I'm going, oh, it's leaking. Oh, we should stop doing that. Oh, hit the camera there. The reason I'm removing the axle tube and the backing plate is because one of the jobs I want to do is replace that bearing that's just in there, and also the seal that's on the end of it, and rear disc conversion. Yep. What do you know, this one's 30 spline too. You can tell just by the way that it is. More scrap. There we go. There's the seized pin. Oh, there's all sorts of junk just falling down in here. Bearing carriers, races, and make sure I know which one's which of those. Left, right. And there's the C-clips. A little spring. There's all sorts of debris in here. It seemed like a good opportunity to change the wheel bearing and seal. Let's see it. Managed to get the seal off. As you can see, the tool chewed its way out, but that did eventually come off. What it did to the end of my tool. Heavens. That was just levering that seal out of there. Now behind here is the wheel bearing. Insert this slide hammer, open up this tool, and it gives me the opportunity to, well, I've been here for an hour banging on this. It's moved maybe 1/16 of an inch. It's hard going. New plan. Travel. Maybe sometime. Well, want to come back to me later on this. Yeah. Well, I think that's the tool worn through at least. Oh, look at that. I can move it by hand now. This should be easy. Oh, why did I say that? Oh, that's the way to do it. You little level. Well, it's one end out. We'll go ahead and do the other one off camera. Clean this up a bit because there's a lot of metal swarf in here now. And then install new wheel bearings. Easy. But what about all that swarf, I hear you ask? Toilet paper, covered in WD-40, wrapped around the end of an old broom handle. Done this a couple of times now. As you can see, the rags are gradually getting less dirty, and I'm running out of toilet paper, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish cleaning this up, and then maybe we can pop some new bearings in there. The bearings incidentally have been popped in the freezer overnight, so they should be easy to slip in. And here's a nice new bearing that I've frozen overnight, ready to slip in there. I'll zoom you in a little bit. Oh, that's not gone well. I'm hoping it would slip in a little easier than that. Here. I suspect it used to go around the other way. That way. Well, that's in. Please excuse the best, but you know what I'm like. This just came. Oh, it's exciting, I know. I see you shiver with anticipation. Yukon standard gear. Then we did slip differential. It's kind of good, doesn't it? You might be wondering why I'm putting on oven gloves. You might also be wondering why I have a small freezer in the garage. Yes, the diff is frozen. Freshly baked. Follow me for more delicious recipes. Oh, it's not quite hot enough. Where's my tickling stick? There it is. Believe me, those bearings are red hot. I thought that would slip on a little easier than that. I've done these plenty of times before. Ow. Yeah, they're hot. And this is freezing cold. Wearing gloves again. This time, black ones. Because black is slimming. A little shiny because I've put some assembly lube on some bearings. So they're ready to plop in. Here's my plop. Did not go to plan. That's better. Question of how much Loctite to use on these bolts. When it starts pouring out all over the ground, stop. That's probably enough. Sitting here with a pile of brackets and nuts and bolts, and I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I guess I'm going to start screwing stuff on and see how it looks. But Dave, what is it you're doing, I hear you ask? Oh, thank you for asking. I'm making it look like I know what I'm doing. In reality, it's fairly obvious that I don't. It's taken years of practice to become an idiot of this standard. Well, what I'm trying to do, and don't judge me, this needs another coat of paint. Rear disc conversion. Now, before we can finalise the position of these things, I need to put a disc brake or disc rotor onto the axle shaft to make sure that lines up okay in there. I'm probably going to have to saw the end of those bolts off, but that's why I've just put them on loosely. Make sure everything feels good. Let me go grab an axle shaft. Oh! Why is everything heavy and... Something wrong with the steering wheel. That's better. Nice engagement on the differential. Probably should put a couple of wheel lugs nuts on there. I have one or two available. Put them on backwards because they're tapered. Obviously there's no C-clip on the other end. Just see how this lines up. Oh, that lines up real nice. Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop for a break. Okay. And take this all to pieces again, put some washers in there, line things up. But you can see what I'm doing. There's nothing I like more than taking brand new things to pieces. This is that differential. But you can see that, right? By taking this pin out, I remove the pin that goes through the middle, locks it all together, and it's just dropped out. So this is how they should be. They should just freely move in and out. This old one, I had to hammer it out and it just got all jammed up. The reason I'm taking it out, roll the differential around, it's in here. I need to get at the end of this axle tube to put the C-clip on. Here is that C-clip. That's on there. Need to push the axle shaft back out. Then I put this pin back in because I'm not ready to do the other side just yet. I suppose I could. I'm not gonna. lot of going backwards and forwards with this. I won't do that up too tight. So I've still got to put the other one in the other end. Well, one way of getting around the emissions on this big old engine is to fit it with a cat.